Welcome to High Powered Living Now. We're reading from the Living Clean, The Journey Continues book, and its subtopic is Growing Pains. Sooner or later, we experience a particular kind of opportunity or catastrophe we haven't heard about in meetings. Sometimes an event like a breakup, the loss of a job, or changes in our family triggers a flow of feelings, and it doesn't stop. Grief, hardship, or betrayal can make us feel terribly lonely. Occasionally, we experience physical changes that bring emotional freight with them, including depression, anxiety, and deep fear. There are also times when we find ourselves in crisis, even though the circumstances of our lives look pretty good. Even the excitement of living our dreams, taking on a new career, moving to a faraway place, creating a family can make us feel like we don't belong. Sometimes an outside event starts the ball rolling. At other times, a cascade of emotions seems to start from nowhere. It can feel like we are backed into a corner, even if nothing is really happening at all. Once we have been through this feeling and survived it clean, we know it won't last forever. But that doesn't mean we can see our way out. We come through these experiences with a deepened understanding and faith in our recovery. Through hard work and grace, if we keep coming back, we do get free. Eventually, all of us come to an emotional crisis in recovery. We start wondering if recovery will last, or if we had just gotten a brief reprieve and we are about to go crazy again. A member shared, "My life seemed stable by outward appearances, but inside I was a mess. I was clean but miserable, reactive and fearful." We find ourselves in these dark places sometimes with many, many years clean. We deal with our addiction, but some of our underlying issues remain untouched. Long buried emotions come pouring to the surface, and we may or may not have the tools to deal with them. As I discovered things about myself, a member shared, my emotions started to run amok. There are no bitter ends in recovery, but sometimes it feels like that's where we are. Recovery gives us a new chance at life. Sometimes we have to accept that invitation more than once. The bottoms we hit in recovery can be frightening. We go through some dark times when we are in pain. It can be hard to reach out and easier to see differences. But even in the darkness, the process is still going on. When NA members say, "Don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle," we're not just talking about the first one. Our lives are full of moments when we are faced with the difficult decision to grow or go. Many of us leave not when things are horrible, but when we have one more spiritual hump to get over. We lose our way right before the miracle, sometimes again and again. The faith that leads us to build a successful life may not be sufficient to sustain that day after day. A new kind of surrender is necessary if we are to stay clean and keep growing. Spiritual growth can be bewildering, frightening, and very lonely. Some of us give up on the process at this crucial point when there is nothing left to blame or change but ourselves. Selfishness and self-centeredness are hard, but we can get through it. With the help of others who have survived this passage, and we find great gifts are waiting for us on the other side. What we heard when we were new still stands. Keep coming back, no matter what. Many of the challenges we face have concrete symptoms, but are actually spiritual in nature. It's hard to spot a spiritual crisis. Usually it is disguised as a crisis in our relationships, finances, career, or family. When we are in a crisis, we may try all kinds of escapes and excuses before we resort to the steps. We can be tolerant, angry, defensive, vengeful, guilty, and resentful, testing the patience and tolerance of those around us. The only way out is through. We must roll up our sleeves and get to work. These struggles often push us into the next phase in our recovery. We can come out stronger and healthier people for the experience if we are willing to do the work. Early in recovery, we are told that if we kept coming to meetings, sooner or later we would hear our story. It would be a mistake to think that our using story is the only one we need to listen for. Our recovery story is no less dramatic, and there are times when we need just as much to go to meetings and listen for that. We hear it when we learn to listen with our heart as well as our ears. Sometimes we have to go looking for it, seeking new meetings, asking around, and sharing about what's going on. We find people who have been through what we are going through and got through it clean. We need other people to walk us through hard times, and we need to reach out and help others as we heal. There is hope. When we listen to others share their pain and how they get through it, we get a broader view. We see new tools in action, and we can learn to use their experience to go forward in our own lives. When we change our attitude or perspective, we can find a new sense of compassion and gratitude. Perhaps the most valuable lesson of all is empathy. However, empathy isn't a treatment plan, it's a way of life. When we can relate with one another and see each other's growth, we begin to believe in the possibility of our own recovery. Listening to other addicts share without judging them is the beginning of listening to our own heart without judgment or punishment. When we have compassion for ourselves, we give ourselves permission to be in the world, and that makes us much more useful to the world. Our ability to feel joy and gratitude can be a direct result of the suffering we have endured. Staying clean is not a guarantee that nothing bad will happen, but the principles and the steps teach us how to live on life's terms and give us the courage, strength, and wisdom to stay clean no matter what. We are able to live lives of joy and purpose no matter what we have been through. Faith is what keeps us doing the footwork even when we can't see the reason. One of the benefits of reaching out is finding that our most painful experiences can help someone else. When we say, I've been through that and I stayed clean, we realize with gratitude that we have gotten to the other side of something we have feared we could not get through. There's great satisfaction in being able not just to look back, but to reach back and help someone else across. Getting through hard times strengthens our faith. When we are grappling with issues that don't have easy answers, we experience our greatest growth. One member suggested there are spiritual tourists and spiritual explorers. One plays it very safe, and the other will step right out there and try God out. We get more certain of that relationship as we go. As we mature in recovery, we learn to be comfortable with the hard questions rather than only feeling okay when we think we've settled them. Having all the answers make it hard to be teachable. Often when we say we are looking for solutions, what we are really seeking is control. Over and over, we go looking for the answers, but there really aren't that many to find, and we don't need that many. The steps help us to increase our ability to be honest with ourselves and others. More often and sooner in the process, we are able to recognize our responsibility for our actions and motives. Identifying what drives us to act as we do helps us to find relief from all the ways our disease shows up. It also gives us the ability to see more clearly. We begin to move toward what we want rather than just away from what we fear. Each time we let go, there's a degree of mourning and then an opening of possibility. Each time we get through that process, we find new freedom in ourselves. But it can take years to let go enough to feel that freedom. We hang on fiercely, mistaking the attempt to control all the variables of our lives for vigilance in our recovery. vigilance in our recovery. Letting go looks different at different times in our recovery. Making peace with loss is one way we learn acceptance. When we experience loss and find that we can still feel complete within ourselves, something changes. The feeling that we must constantly fight for our survival starts to ease. We can let someone else be right or let something go without losing ourselves or our dignity. We can see our part in situations without falling into the belief that everything has to be somebody's fault. Often, a loss we are struggling to accept in the present helps us to deal with easier losses that haunt us. Acceptance is not on an all or nothing event, and it doesn't necessarily happen all at once. Like so many lessons in recovery, there are less painful ways to learn, but they're not always the ones that stay with us. The more we learn about ourselves, the more we are able to work toward our own personal vision of hope. At the same time, we remember that our vision for ourselves is a fleeting glimpse of our higher power's will for us. As we pursue our dreams, we may find ourselves in places we never imagined. It's all possible, but that means we take risks and sometimes experience failure. Even when we fall flat on our face, we can get up again and move forward. That's part of the journey too. We get less and less afraid of the truth, but we don't get there by standing still and waiting for recovery to happen to us. We learn, we grow, we give, we create, and we keep coming back.